Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Elrom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, 2012 saw a huge shift in the Israeli public's political sway. An end-of-the-year survey reveals that the majority of Israelis are becoming more doubtful of a realistic peace agreement with the Palestinians. The poll, conducted by the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, reveals that 83% of Israelis do not believe that the conflict would end even if Israel withdrew to the indefensible pre-1967 borders and divided the capital, Jerusalem. The poll reflects that 79% feel that it is important that the Palestinians recognize Israel's right to exist, while only 23% believe that will actually happen. When asked what is more important, defensible borders or a peace agreement, 61% of the Jewish Israeli respondents said that defensible borders are more important. This survey reflects a shift in the mindset of the Israeli public from 2005, when only 49% said that defensible borders is more important than a peace agreement.
An advisor to the president of Egypt and prominent Muslim Brotherhood leader has declared that Israel will be wiped out within a decade. Saying that there will be no such thing as Israel, Issam al-Arian asserted that Palestine will be there in its place.
Egypt is seeking a dramatic realignment in relations with the terrorist group Hezbollah. According to the Egyptian ambassador to Lebanon, Ashraf Hamdi, Egypt wants to tighten their relations with the Lebanese-based Iranian satellite army. He told Lebanon's Daily Star newspaper that the terrorist group was a real force on the ground in Lebanon with big political and military influence. He said that Egypt, dominated by the Muslim Brotherhood, will begin stretching out its hand to all regional powers, including Hezbollah. The ambassador confirmed that he had met with members of the terrorist group, saying, "In our discussions, we stressed that we want Hezbollah to remain as a political force in Lebanon."
The widow of the late PLO leader Yasser Arafat has admitted to journalists that her husband premeditated the launching of the bloody Second Intifada. Speaking to Dubai television, Suha Arafat said that following the failure of the Camp David peace talks in July of the year 2000, she met him in Paris where he advised her to remain. When she asked why, she said that her husband then informed her of his plans to carry out another violent uprising against Israel. The Palestinians have long claimed that a visit by Ariel Sharon to the Temple Mount several months before his election as Israeli Prime Minister sparked the Second Intifada, but the statement from Arafat's widow revealed the PLO's intention to attack Israel. More than 1,000 Israelis were killed during the conflict when civilians were targeted in a brutal suicide bombing campaign.
A London-based Arabic newspaper reported that Yemen has intercepted an Iranian shipment of weapons headed to the Gulf states' Shiite rebels. 16 Syrian citizens and 2 Somalis were detained along with the cargo, which reportedly contained a great variety of weapons. Yemen's National Security Board chief, Major General Ali al-Ahmadi, released a statement saying Iran is providing the al-Houthis Shiite rebels with weapons via the Medi seaport in the Red Sea. He went on to say that Iran has also exploited the political turmoil in Yemen to expand its leverage in the north. The Yemeni president has accused Iran of supplying weapons and training to other terrorist groups in the country. Yemen has also accused Iran of recruiting more than 1,000 young men to receive military training from Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria. After completing the training, the recruits were sent to Iran for religious indoctrination. The men then returned to Yemen, where they formed terror cells and awaited instructions from Tehran. A Yemeni daily newspaper stated that Yemen is very concerned that Iran is using the youth for espionage and sabotage on behalf of Tehran.
A cell of the al-Qaeda terror organization operating in Yemen has announced a bounty on the head of the American ambassador to Sana'a, as well as any U.S. soldier. The group's website posted an offer of $160,000 to anyone who will assassinate U.S. Ambassador Gerald Fierstein and $23,000 for the killing of U.S. troops as a reward for inspiring and encouraging Muslims to engage in a jihad holy war.
An Israeli national was arrested in Egypt last week. The 24-year-old computer technician is being held on espionage charges. Sources in Egypt claim that the man was seen photographing sensitive security sites in Egypt. The young man's parents insist that he is a peace activist and was meeting friends in Cairo. Security sources in Egypt released a statement saying that he is being questioned and that the interrogations would reveal the real motive behind his infiltration.
Nearly 400 people were killed in the bloodiest single day since the start of the uprising in Syria 22 months ago. According to reports from the Republic's opposition, more than 220 people were executed after their arrests by loyalist troops for collaborating against the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Dozens of other Syrian civilians were killed while waiting in line for bread outside of Hama. Shortages of flour and fuel in the war-torn country have caused the price of bread to skyrocket, and starving people often pay up to $10 for just a small quantity. An estimated 70% of the residents in Aleppo, the largest city in Syria, and once considered to be the republic's economic capital, are now unable to afford any bread at all.
Pastor Youssef Nakdarkhani, the Iranian man who was imprisoned for more than 3 years for converting from Islam to Christianity, has been rearrested. According to reports, the pastor and his defense attorney were taken into custody by the Revolutionary Guards on Christmas Day. And in a related story, a dual Iranian-American citizen, Pastor Saeed, has also been arrested in Iran. He's a Christian who was in the Islamic Republic visiting family and attending to an orphanage that he established there. His extended family has been placed under house arrest in Tehran, and the pastor himself is in one of Iran's harshest prisons. His American wife and their 2 young children are in the United States pleading for his release. The American Center for Law and Justice is working to encourage the U.S. State Department to aid the 2 Christian pastors.
A recent study on the plight of Christians in the Middle East reveals just how dire the situation has become. Conducted by a leading British think tank, the survey found that Christians living in the region face more persecution than other minorities and are particularly at risk in Muslim-dominated societies. The report is entitled Christianophobia and states that the pace of the assault is now intensifying with the rise of militant Islam in countries such as Egypt, Iraq, and Syria. In the early 1900s, Christians made up some 20% of the population of the Middle East, but today the community amounts to less than 5%. There's only one area of the Middle East where Christians are protected and thriving, which is the Jewish state of Israel. More than 158,000 Christians are now living in Israel, where they enjoy the freedom of religion and the state's protection of their holy sites.
The Simon Wiesenthal Center, an international human rights group, has published its list of 2012's top anti-Semites. 2 Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood members were tied for first place for their public anti-Israel remarks and for publicly praying with the Egyptian president for Allah's help to destroy the Jews and their supporters. The hardline Iranian Islamic Republic took second place on the list. Its president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, has repeatedly threatened to wipe Israel off the map, and he is building a nuclear weapons program specifically for that purpose.
The state of Israel has welcomed its oldest immigrant to date when Brazilian businessman Moses Lederman made Aliyah this year at the age of 100. The new Israeli centenarian said that he was only sorry that he didn't come to Israel earlier on, and that it was better late than never to have his dream come true.
The Hadassah organization is planting a grove of trees in memory of the 26 victims of the December 14th school massacre in Newtown, Connecticut. The grove was inspired by Veronique Posner, mother of 6-year-old Noah Posner, who was killed in the attack on Sandy Hook Elementary School. Marcy Natan, president of Hadassah, said everybody was so affected by the massacre and wanted to do something to express their solidarity with the families.
And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in another beautiful day on our rooftop studio. My guest today is Pastor Robert So, representative of the evangelical Christian leaders of the Navajo Nation. Pastor So, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Josh. It's awesome to be here in Israel. This is my first time here, me and my wife, and we had a team here. We bring our Navajo president, Ben Shelley, which is translated in Hebrew, son of mine, I heard. And it's just an honor to be here. I love the place. I went from the north to the south, and we're just having a wonderful time in Yeshua.
Well, you know, it's just been amazing to see this incredible support for Israel coming from the Navajo Nation. As you mentioned, the president of the Navajo Nation was just here in Israel to meet with government leaders to talk about cooperation. Why do you think Navajo people are standing with Israel?
First of all, Josh, the Navajo Nation, I believe, is a forefront runner among nations. Right now, there's 566 nations, and our nation, because it's the largest and has the most landmass, I believe we have a forerunning type of a spirit, and we seem to move, and when we do something, not all nations, but I believe some nations that we're in relationship with our president seem to go along with how we move.
Well, you know, we were told that the Navajo Nation in America its landmass is 3 times the size of Israel, and its president Ben Shelley has a representative at the United Nations, has contact with the United States. How much of a political force has the Navajo Nation become?
Josh, I believe the political force the Navajo Nation has become is like nations look at them and keep up with what we do as a nation, and decide whether or not it's something that they would like to do. And we're just so glad that we can represent in that way for our nations.
You know, we see that when people come to the Christian faith, their support for Israel grows. Is that why you believe more Navajo people are now standing with Israel, because of their commitment to Christianity?
Yes, Josh. When I came to the Navajo Nation in 1996, I noticed in Bible school that we just mentioned, well, let's just pray for Israel, and that's something that we did. But we really didn't get to know Israel, and that's when we started to find out that there were non-natives, missionaries coming in and trying to teach us more compassion and more love, and bring about a revelation of Israel into the Navajo Nation. And through the years, it just started building up, prayers and intercession. The missionaries will come and go, some of them disappointed because maybe we didn't catch that revelation. But now it's starting to just move and explode, and people are starting to realize that Israel is something that Israel is a country that we need to align up with, Josh.
Well, President Ben Shelley was here not just for spiritual and moral support, but also for cooperation. He wants to work with Israel to develop agriculture and different industry in the Navajo Nation. How important is this cooperation to building the Navajo Nation?
Well, we are if you look at, after going up and down from the north side of Israel to the south side, especially the south of Israel, it is just so identical to our environment on the Navajo reservation. But the only thing is you see patches of oases and agriculture, and there's all kinds of growth going on environmentally, and that's something we heard of, and that's just something we wanted to see for ourselves, and we got to see it. It's awesome, especially that they're growing some what are they called, cabbage and corn and way out in the middle of the desert, and that's something we sure like to see on the Navajo reservation. And we're hoping that maybe we could take that back and introduce that to our directors and our technologists on the Navajo reservation and possibly bring them over here.
Yes, we've actually literally been able to make the deserts bloom. It's been quite a miracle. We're seeing a lot of support from the Native Americans, the Native Canadians, the First Nations. What do you think is the future for the relationship between Israel and the Navajo people?
I believe for the Navajo people, number one is there's going to be, I'll call the word revival, to where the Navajo Nation, as we grow in Christianity and beliefs in bringing in Yeshua, not in a way to where it's overwhelming for a Navajo Nation, but in a way that it's an introduction and a relationship. And I believe the other nations will come in and they'll follow. And just being here is awesome. And I think it's just gonna grow.
Pastor, so there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I just want to tell the viewing audience that it's to walk here where Christ walked is awesome. And as a Native American, for Native Americans to walk here, to be born again and saved and feel the presence of the Lord and be here, especially you pastors and leaders out there that are Navajo and other tribes and other nations, to be here is something that you need to do. And it's a wonderful place. There's wonderful people here. The Israeli people they honor and they respect the Native Americans, and they welcome you, and you'll be blessed. And it's just so awesome to be here, Josh.
Thank you, Pastor So, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Shalom from Jerusalem. My name's David Ben. We all know that famous verse in the Bible, God blesses those who bless Israel. But did you ever stop and think about what is the greatest thing I can bless Israel with? Obviously, the greatest thing in life isn't a new car or even a new house. The greatest thing in life is children. Yes, God blesses those who bless Israel. And yes, the greatest thing you can give Israel is more children. Find out how you can save a life in Israel and bring more children to Israel. Visit friendsofefrat.org and help save a life of a child in Israel.
Up next, Shining Light from Israel.
He left in the morning and he said goodbye, and he went off with his friend Yosef Ishran, and they never came home.
He took a day off from school with a friend of his and came out here into the canyon to explore Israel, to explore his backyard. And he was trapped in this cave back there by 4 or 5 Palestinian terrorists.
They were beaten to death with rocks.
This is the cave where Kobe and Yosef were murdered. It's a place of great horror and great holiness at the same time.
I felt like I had no control and no understanding of the world. I felt that there had to be a God who had a much greater understanding than I could ever have, because I felt so limited. We were surrounded by people who took care of us physically and emotionally and spiritually, and were just there for us. And so all the love that people showed us gave us the power to feel that we could take this horror and cruelty and transform it into some kind of good in the world.
We were determined to create something out of the tragedy of Kobe's death.
We understood this horror of elut, of grief, the sharpness of the grief and the intensity and the way it was like a wild animal. And we understood the way it hurt us and the way it hurt our children. And we saw that other families and children who had family members murdered by terrorists needed help, and that we could find a way to give them that help. So we got the idea to do a small camp for children who had relatives killed by terrorists in Israel. Now we have 600 kids in the camp.
It meets for about 15 or 20 days per year at 3 or 4 different times. These kids come back each time to their counselors and to their friends, so that they always have something to look forward to.
A lot of mothers, they don't give themselves time to grieve. They go right back to regular life. And even during the Shiva, they're already feeding other people and taking care of other people. And I got the idea that I should bring other women who'd suffered loss by having terrorists murder their children, bring them for 2-day healing programs. If you can find a way to put good into the world, then in a way you're bringing the dead person into the world, because all that good is created on the back of that person. Our camp is the happiest place in the world, because when you've hit the low of lows, also your high gets raised up. Like you can reach an even greater joy, because you know how great happiness is.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come explore Jerusalem, where Jesus opened blind eyes. Visit the hills of Galilee, where Jesus fed the multitude. Stroll through Capernaum, where Jesus lived and taught and healed. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
Stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Welcome again to ICJ Report, and today we have a very special guest with us, Pastor Stephen Curry, who is directing together with his father, Pastor Naim Curry, Holy Land Missions, which is an apostolic ministry here in the Holy Land. They have been planting churches over the past decades here in Israel, but also in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. He's a true man of God, and it's a privilege for us to have him with us today. Pastor Stephen, tell us about what is the situation in the Middle East in general for Christians, but also in particular here in Israel and the surrounding areas.
That's Jürgen. We are in a day and age right now where people want to know the true Jesus Christ. People want to know the true message of hope. And what better time for us as believers in Christ, both local Arabs, believers, to be a light for the world in this land. This is the time more than ever for the Christians around the world to spread the light of Christ, to spread the love of God to all faith, to all people groups, regardless of who they are.
You just mentioned me, you have been down in Gaza, which of course is a very difficult situation there. Tell us what you are doing there.
Well, Dr. Jürgen, I want to start out by saying that God putting Gaza on your heart and putting the suffering believers in Gaza on the heart of the ICEJ leadership, it speaks volumes, because the church in Gaza, the believers in Gaza are broken. The believers in Gaza are seeking and searching for someone to stand with them. And it's more than just a monetary thing, more than just a resource thing. They want somebody just to let them know, we are with you, we're standing behind you, more than just words. So therefore we went into Gaza to show this broken church that they are not forgotten. We went into Gaza, we prayed with them, we fed them, we gave them food baskets, we did worship and praise and teaching, Bible teaching, to show them that they are not forgotten and that we know that they are not the only ones alone.
And what I hear that you also established churches in places like Jenin and Hebron and some of the other Arab communities here in the West Bank.
We have 7 active ministries throughout the whole country, both on the Arab side and the Israeli sides. My heart right now is Jerusalem. My heart goes out to Jerusalem. My heart is broken for Jerusalem because I believe it is the epicenter for the world, for the Arabs there. The Arabs listen. The world listens to the Arabs in Jerusalem. So if I can change the hearts and the minds of the people in Jerusalem, then I believe we can change the rest of the Middle Eastern world.
The amazing thing is that in the middle of all this chaos and this political turmoil, we hear fantastic reports about revivals taking place in the Middle East today. Places like Iran and even in Egypt. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
There are many revivals happening in the Middle East. You have the church in Iran is doubling and tripling, more than 20%. 200,000 believers are coming to Christ on a regular basis. You have believers in Egypt as well. The underground church in Egypt is growing. The believers in Egypt are growing to become more bold about what they believe in. And the church in Syria, under what's going on right now, the church in Syria is coming together and uniting all denominational churches that believe in Jesus Christ, are coming together to sort of realize that the common enemy is the devil, is Satan, not ourselves. And what that's is creating this new atmosphere where Christians in the Middle East in general are realizing that time is short, that we must redeem that time. That is something that my father and I have been teaching and preaching on TV, on satellite. We have the privilege to speak to more than 200 million Arabs and Muslims and traditional Christians around the world to teach these Middle Easterners the concept of who Jesus is and what Jesus wants us to be. And I'm just challenging Christians in the West and Europe to start imitating the faith of the Middle Eastern believers, to love Jesus till death. And what a more powerful message to have right now, where Arabs are coming to Christ, and what an opportunity that right now God's given ICEJ to be a part of this, and you're taking this miracle and you're taking it to the next level. We're telling the world Arabs are believing in Jesus Christ. Arabs are changing their hearts and their minds.
Our Isaiah 62 campaign actually started 2 years ago because God put it on our heart to pray for the Arab nations and to pray in particular for a fresh outpouring of the Holy Spirit and for a revival here in the Middle East. Please continue standing with us, but also keep in mind that the Arab churches here in the regions, they are caught between the lines and they need your support and your prayers. We are your embassy here in Jerusalem. May the Lord bless you out of Zion.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all your Israel updates.